Alright, man. Looks like there's nothing here. Keep your eyes up. You never know what your... What the hell are you wearing? These are my PJs. Where is your tactical armor? Your vest? Anything? Who needs tactical armor? Alright? I'll just stop the bullets with my good looks. Man, you're just hating because I look good. You know, you've gotten a little thick. Maybe you should lay off the donuts. The vest barely fits you. Hey man, watch it. Okay? I know, put a little weight on. Okay? But you don't gotta sit there and point that out. I'm still gonna protect myself from some bullets. Where's your gear at? You're just mad because you've been eating too many freaking donuts and you got Sergeant Dipstick over here. Man, better not have to pick your ass up. Alright, come on, let's go. Let's get out of here. Just look, man. Whatever you do, don't go down.
Agent deceased.
Oh, son of a bitch! Is this thing on? Alright. Woo-wee! It's time to talk about some games, baby. Alright, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm your host. This is On The Shelf. I know I'm a little bit late with this one. I apologize. I wanted to make sure that I really played through it and really hammered it and made sure I got through most of the content. And there's a lot of content here. But is that a good thing? Now, I've seen some reviewers say that The Division 2 sets a new gold standard, a new bar, when it comes to the looter-shooter franchises. And I've heard some people say that this thing misses the mark by a mile. And so I kind of wanted to at least get in here, because I'm kind of actually in between a little bit. But I want to explain and go over a few of the things that I've saw and what I played and what I enjoyed and what I didn't, what I think could be continued to be improved on. Really kind of go ahead and show where, yes, some looter shooters can learn some lessons from, while at the same time the Division 2 can continue learning lessons of its own. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So first, let's go ahead and actually talk about the combat, because I feel like that's the one thing that everybody kind of compared the Division 2 to the Division. And said it's the same thing. It looks the same, it looks like it plays out the same, and in some ways it does. You know, the hit markers and certain contact and stuff, yeah, it feels relatively the same. However, combat is very different. While there's actually, I'd say probably about 80% of the same enemy types as there were in the Division, there are a few new types as well here in the Division 2. But compared to the Division, which was... It tried to be a cover, shooter, kind of like in the vein of like a Gears of War or a SOCOM, game of some sorts where, you do use the cover system to go ahead and protect yourself and pop shots and whatnot. Here, it feels more like a real-time strategy game, an RTS. Instead of something like XCOM where you take turns, going back and forth and hoping for percentages on certain shots and yada yada yada, this plays out on the run. It's a chess game, really. Trying to sit there and make sure you avoid certain types of enemies that will shred you in the matter of seconds versus, enemies that are going to come charging you to flush you out of your positions. This system actually really, really works, and I feel like they finally kind of nailed, for the most part, a really good system, a good play system for their combat, because cover is entirely useful, because in the previous game, yeah, you used cover from time to time, especially when you played against certain bosses or you played certain in-game content, but for the most part you were just running and gunning. The cover system was kind of Here, you need to make sure you utilize your cover system. You need to make sure you utilize, when to sit there and move around and kind of piece around, because enemies are going to constantly be moving around and being very aggressive towards you. And this does make it fairly entertaining. It kind of makes it frustrating sometimes when you're playing by yourself, but at the same time, most of the game, if not all the game, actually, now that I think about it, all the game can be completed by yourself. But it's obviously a game that definitely begs to be played with friends, which obviously isn't a bad thing, because like I said, if you're a solo player, you ain't got no friends, that's perfectly fine. But I know most of the playthrough that I played through, I enjoyed it way more when I played with my boy Solar Flare. There is one little issue that I have with the combat, and it's actually not even the combat itself. The combat works really, really well in mission structures. And I know that that was something that I believe Skill Up actually had pointed out. And, he talked about how the combat was so good that it does feel like, this really good back and forth. But one thing that I don't feel like he touched on, and that I feel like should be touched on, is it's very aggravating in the real world, because you'll have those same systems fighting certain little groups of enemies in the real world, whether you're trying to help out hostages or you're trying to take over control points. And the issue is that while you're bunkered down and trying to figure out a strategy to take on the guys behind you, you have guys spawning behind you. And it totally ruins everything. And while, yes, sometimes it can be fun and add a little extra layer to the game itself, most times than not, you're going to feel frustrated and wanting to punch your screen because you're one or two enemies away from completing a particular objective, and all of a sudden 4 more guys spawn behind you and start shooting you in the ass. Another really quick thing too is also the fact that the world also feels much more alive because of the storm systems that pass through as well. Something that I came to appreciate because it gave this level of like tact, almost like this tactical kind of approach where, yeah, sometimes particular enemies couldn't see you and you couldn't see them until you run up to them, and so with this, it was like these dust storms or these thunderstorms, and there's even like fog and stuff like that happen, that just kind of roll in and out however they want, and it leaves you kind of either risking getting ambushed when you try to take on an enemy or two that you can see, but you don't know who else is still hiding in the fog, but also can use it as cover if you ever needed to get away as well. And so, and the sound design too, when it comes to the thunder and the rain hit and everything, and it all sounds and looks really great, and like I said, it adds more realism and depth to the world to make it feel more alive. But overall, whether it's abilities are I feel like were tuned really, really well here. I mean, there's some returning ones, obviously, but there's a couple of new ones as well. Abilities obviously play a big part in this game when it comes to that kind of RTS thing where, you may make sure that you use your abilities just right, or you wind up throwing everything all off. You use your ability too soon, and suddenly, you're left stranded, your guy's down, and you have no way to fight off the enemies. So the abilities are really well done. I feel like there's nothing like super overpowered. I feel like most of them, not so much balanced as just much as the fact that like they all have their positives and negatives. I mean, yeah, that I guess in a way balanced, but it's not like they even kill. They neuter everything to be exactly the same. It's just what's your playstyle, and it really emphasizes, like, the Division 1 had that to a degree, but the Division 2 emphasizes on it with its fantastic combat and its back and forths with these systems. And of course, another really big thing that they get right is the loot. I mean, there's so much of it. Anthem is a game, and I don't want to just sit here and bash on Anthem, but Anthem as a game could learn a lesson or two from the Division 2 if it ever wanted to eventually rebound. Because where the Anthem is constantly choking you out to give you the bare minimum of loot. I mean, the only other game I've seen rain loot on me this much in a loot explosion is probably Borderlands 2, and that's about it. Every time, no matter who you're taking on, you could be taking on a high-end enemy in a public square, you could be doing a mission, you could be wandering around and find secret caches. The Division 2 does a really great job of never wasting your time. There always seems to be something going on in the world. It feels like the world itself is alive and breathing. So because of that, you have these you're always finding loot. You're always finding something that's going to upgrade you or make you a bit better, so that way you can take on the next challenge. And there's several world tiers, when you get to the end game, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about end game. But there's always constantly things to be progressing and doing and completing, and that's the reason why I'm so far behind on this review, because after getting through Crackdown 3 and Metro Exodus and Devil May Cry 5 and Anthem, playing 25-30 hours of Anthem, this one I was like, okay, there's a lot here. I'm going to take my time and absorb it all, so I could be as critical and critique it as best as I possibly could. But there's tons of loot. There's probably 100 or more different guns. And the thing is especially once you get up to the higher tiers, like Superior and High End, much like the original Division, you actually start to notice that you have different abilities, different perks on these guns, and some of them work really well and some of them don't. I know they just actually, with this last update that they did on Friday, today is Saturday as I'm making this video, but Friday, yesterday, they actually had an update to help out some of those abilities, because some of them were really high up there to try and activate some of them. And I know they did that with some of the mods and stuff as well, too. And honestly, I'm just rather impressed with the Division 2, because really, most of what the Division 2 does right is that it does absolutely learn a lot of its lessons from the first Division. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't learn all of its lessons, but it learns, I'd say 80 to 85% of the lessons that it got wrong in the release of the Division. It absolutely nails the second time around. All that work that they did all the way up to the 1.8 for the Division, they took that, moved over the Division 2, tweaked it around and worked on it and made it an even better product. And so that's why, honestly, for the most part, I can't sit there and say that this is Division 1.5. This is definitely a sequel. For the most part. We get a different setting. You get the map of Washington, D.C. is really well fleshed out, and it's actually really interesting. It's a very stark contrast from the snowy Manhattan streets to these almost overgrown jungle-like city now of Washington, D.C., as there's wildlife rolling around everywhere, and, trees and bushes and vines are overtaking everything. The world feels mostly alive. But if there was one little small critique about the world that I had, it's really just the fact that, okay, there's animals in the world, but there's nothing to do with them. And I'm not saying that every Ubisoft game needs to have hunting and tracking and all this other stuff. It's just, especially considering the fact that, you need food, water, and materials for your control points that are dotted throughout the map, that you want to try and take over and keep control of, to make sure that you have less baddies patrolling your streets, and it'll also help make sure that there's more reinforcements around too at all times when you need them. You need to sit there and constantly stock these things up. It would have been nice that if you kill an animal that you could take it for food. It's just to help add and make it where everything continues to feel useful, because most of the stuff in the game feels useful for the most part. I know that they need to keep tweaking a little bit with mods and the crafting a little bit, because it's, if anything, those are the only ones that are really kind of missing the nail. But for the most part, anything that you pick up or anything that you go ahead and you make or you use are generally useful. They're good. It doesn't feel like you're just building shit to build shit. It feels like you're building the things that you want and the things that you need to help you be able to do whatever type of playstyle you're doing, whether it's defensively, if you're doing an aggro type, or somewhere in between, whatever you want to play or however you want to play, you're going to find the stuff, and you're going to be able to build the stuff to kind of fit your playstyle. Now, obviously, one of the steps that I genuinely think they took back, and I absolutely agree with Skillup and a lot of other people that have pointed it out, is absolutely the story. The story, I couldn't begin to tell you who any of these people are. I don't know who they are.
I promise. The attack came from Jefferson Plaza. You know what to do. Hey! Kill them all.
There's like maybe one or two like kind of interesting characters, but they give them no screen time and they give them no cutscenes and they give you no moments to genuinely bond with them. So you're like, I don't know who this person is. I don't even remember the names of a single person. I don't even remember the president's name. I kept going Mr. President to him and that was it. I don't even remember his name. And it makes me sad because with the first division, I felt like the story wasn't very good, but it was like writing that gray line, that little thin line between being good and bad. You know, yeah, it leaned a little on the bad, but just a few tweaks and it could have actually been kind of good. And I think that this story really needed at least a character or two from the first division to help not only bring people up to speed, but also make it where you go, oh, hey, I remember that person. And help you feel a little more invested and then actually genuinely flesh out the characters that they have because, you know, they're supposed to be adding more story content for free, which is great. Don't get me wrong, I love that. But I'm a little less excited about it because I don't know who any of these people are. And I don't genuinely care. It's really disheartening because so much of the game is so good that it really is just, it's disappointing that here they just totally, it's like they just totally phoned it in. And it's, like I said, it's disheartening is all. I would love to sit there and see you guys really be able to bring it around. I'm genuinely serious about that. Every once in a while, I catch you guys have really good writing. So I know that there are people on your team that can write really, really good, that actually has some captivating stuff, whether it's some of the echoes or, you know, some of the phone conversations, some other little sound bites here and there. There are some good bits here and there that you're like, oh, okay, and it kind of sparks your curiosity, makes you sit up in your chair a little bit because you're, okay, this is good stuff. But there's not enough of it. And to be honest with you, it needs more of that energy that was put into the echoes and put it into the phone messages and all the other stuff infused into the main story missions as well. Now, there's some great story missions, though, that have you fighting alongside some of the other agents and some of the other characters and stuff like that. And I'd love to see more of that as well. Because I've been playing back through Borderlands 2 lately. That's really what I've been kind of going back to, especially with the announcement earlier this week. Actually, earlier last week, I should say, of Borderlands 3. And it got me hyped up. I was like, you know what? I miss Borderlands 2, and I want to see if it's still as amazing as I thought it was. And it's safe to say that, yeah, it is. Because the writing is fantastic. The characters are well written and just fleshed out. And you have a story that's interesting. A story that also, by the way, features a bad guy that is still one of the most memorable bad guys in all of gaming. With that, though, Borderlands 2 nails it on all levels. But the one here that, like I said, I'd love for the Division to be able to take a little bit more into is definitely sit there and reach across the aisle, or definitely at least take some lessons from Borderlands. I get that Borderlands and the Division are two completely different games in tone, but that doesn't mean that the writing can't at least take some hints from one another about, okay, well, why is it that the writing works for this zany particular game, but it doesn't, you know, the writing that we have doesn't really work for our very serious game. And the main reason why, other than the fact that obviously I don't care about anybody, the biggest issue with the story in the Division 2 really just comes down to the fact that sometimes they take themselves too seriously, and sometimes they go for this emotional Oscar moment that is never built up in a legitimate way. And those are, those factored in with the fact that, like I said, you don't really know or care about any of the characters, just makes everything fall flat. And while I get that some people go, it's not that important, it's not that big of a deal, this could make it set up to be the next gold standard. Because with everything else that it does right, it even has some lessons that even Borderlands could learn from. Granted, I don't think they will, since I know most of their development time is mostly drawing down. I know they're working on the polish and making sure everything is good to go for that September release date. It's April. They got 5 months. I don't know how much of that they're going to actually be able to inject. It is still something that even if Borderlands can't learn, other genres can learn. Oh, hey, we can do this. Like the ability to sit there and have this living universe that it has, You know, like I said earlier, with Washington, D.C., it feels like it's alive. And so with it feeling like it's alive, it always feels like it's rewarding. Like, it actually legitimately took cues from even things like Skyrim and The Witcher 3 RPGs and kind of incorporated it into here as well. So that way, not only does everything feel alive, but like I said, everything feels like you're always getting new loot. You're always getting new things, new guns with different perks and different weapons and different pieces of armor and gear and all this other stuff. And they're constantly adding new stuff as well. They just added more stuff with this latest patch. So, and armor and guns are really well done too, because with the armor, you actually have like different sets and you have, you know, different abilities and perks. And it's actually cool because what used to be only really attached to the highest tier, I can't remember what they were called. They were some kind of specialized sets that you would get from like the high-end in-game stuff. And I'm glad to sit there and see that they kind of spread it, even all the way down to like commons. Or not commons, my bad, uncommons. And, you know, they'd only put like 1 or 2 perks on there, and if you had a matching set, you'd get both the perks. But with the higher end stuff, the superior gear and the high end stuff, you match 3 pieces of gear, and you're gonna get, you know, a bunch of cool abilities, and you can actually pick and choose which abilities that you're like, okay, well, I like this, and I like that, and even with, you know, and I believe it actually carried over from the Division 1. I'm a little rusty on the Division 1. It's been probably about 6 to 8 months since I've played it last. But if I remember straight, with the Division 1, there was still the ability to sit there and tear down certain guns and actually move certain perks over to other guns that you really liked, and maybe that they were, you know, higher leveled or something along the lines of that, especially if you liked, if certain perks matched your certain playstyle or matched maybe a set of gear that you had. And that carries over in the Division 2, or at least it's here in the Division 2, and that's also extremely useful as well. These are like little things, the skill sets are the gear sets, and the ability to transfer certain abilities and perks from guns are things that can easily be learned by other franchises like Destiny or Borderlands. Hell, even Anthem. You want to make your guns interesting? There you go. Because that's the biggest issue that Anthem has. I mean, among the hundreds, go look that up. And if you haven't checked it out, or if you haven't heard, I mean, Anthem, I get that obviously Anthem's a mess because of the fact that it only had like 16 months or something like that, or 18 months of production time, which is ridiculously low. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew that that was kind of the case. But it doesn't mean that, you know, like I said before earlier, Anthem could still learn a ton of lessons from the Division 2 when it comes to making loot not only interesting, but also knowing how much to give and how much, you know, people want to get loot. And Anthem's biggest thing is, I guess, just to sit there and bore people away, because right now, you know, where the Division 2 and Borderlands 2 even still to this day rain loot from the heavens on you, Anthem, like I said before, wants to choke you out of it. Like, they want you to hold your breath for 3 minutes and then they'll give you a piece of loot. And most people are leaving in droves because of this. So there are a lot of things that, you know, Division 2 and Ubisoft actually really did well. Massive here did really, really well to make it where people always want to get on for the most part, which actually factors into the end game. There's a lot to the end game. From high-end level missions, you know, you got your hard difficulty missions, you've got your assassinations, you've got your contracts, you've got, you know, you've got your strongholds, which they actually just finally opened up the 4th one. And here at the end of the month, we're getting our first raid, and it's an 8-player raid. So I mean, there are so many avenues and ways and just things for you to do. You know, control points are constantly being retaken over. You can take those over, and it rewards you with more high-end gear. You know, you can go trail around in the dark zone, and 2 of them have normalized stats. One of them has the ridiculous stats from, you know, Division 1, where you can just kind of gear yourself up in the most ridiculous shits. That way you don't take damage, or you'll do ridiculous amounts of damage and just slaughter everybody. And so on and so forth. There's just so many different avenues for you to explore or to do whatever you want, whether you're a solo player playing with friends, to go experience the Division. The Division, if Anthem has no end game, then I would sit there and say, probably other than Borderlands 2, The Division 2 is the only game that has all the endgame. And I'd say Destiny's kind of in the middle. Because the biggest issue with Destiny, whether people want to admit it or not, with The Division 2, I can matchmake into anything. And I'm going to assume you can matchmake into the raids as well. Now, I get that some people are like, well, that'll be frustrating. That'll be frustrating for me. The same people that are complaining about it being frustrating are the same people that have 7 friends to play with. They'll never have to experience that. For the rest of us, though, that is something that's really nice. Because if I ever did want to experience the raid, it's not even just sometimes about completing it. Sometimes you just want to experience it, kind of understand, then go look for a competent team. Because the reality is most of the time, I join up to play Destiny raids, and this main reason why I haven't played a Destiny raid in fucking forever is because I'm tired of fucking being, treated like a child. Because for the longest time, I had a 10-hour-a-day, 6-day-a-week job. I couldn't raid all the time. And I didn't have 5 friends to raid with. So when I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, I've watched a few YouTube videos, that's about it. Oh, great, we got a noob. And it just gets to the point where you're like, I don't even want to play anymore. And now while I get, though, too, that, Destiny's kind of easing up on that a little bit, Division 2 has completely bypassed them. And, like I said, you can any in-game activity that you want to do, whether it's a stronghold, whether it's, any of these contracts, whether it's certain hard difficulty missions, invading missions, anything. You can matchmake, find somebody, boom, now I can play all this stuff. Or you can play by yourself. If you're a badass, you can absolutely play by yourself. And so, yeah, well, like I said, Anthem is like the drought of endgame. Division 2 is the Pacific Ocean, while Borderlands 2 is apparently the Atlantic Ocean. And then I would guess that makes Destiny the Gulf of Mexico. Anywho, my point here is that there is, like I said, a ton of avenues. And it's great stuff. It's fun. And it makes it where you always feel like you're accomplishing something. Because even then, too, you have your clan stuff. And your clan rewards, which, that's another thing, too. Clan rewards need to be tweaked just a smidge. Because, I've seen some other people comment on some of massive stuff on the Division 2's, like, Twitter pages and stuff like that. Talking about how, hey, some of this... If you're looking at your screen and wondering why my shirt looks like it's changed hues, it's because it has. My camera died, so... What was I saying again? Oh, yes. Clan rewards. So, the biggest issue really is that clan rewards right now that don't have, 20 plus people who are playing every single day aren't getting anything. And so I like that there's clan rewards, and I like that there's challenges and vendors and other certain things to really promote this clan behavior. And obviously there are goals, detailed that you accomplish as a clan, whether it's getting X amount of kills or deconstructing X amount of things. These things are actually, really good, and it promotes a great clan balance. But for people who are in small amounts of clans of 10 or less, I think my clan has 9 people in it, you never achieve anything. For instance, there was, just a week or two ago, there was a clan challenge to, I think it was deconstruct something like 1,400 items. I deconstructed probably about 100 plus items. And it's one of those things, too, where, you have to balance it, too, because you need credits to do certain things and to buy certain things and to construct certain things. So you need to make sure you have this balance of selling some of your excess stuff as well as deconstructing it. The other issue, too, that I've noticed is, especially when you're deconstructing, you wind up racking up the amount of materials you can have really quickly. And you don't really utilize and use a lot of these materials. So really, eventually you get to a point where you're deconstructing stuff for nothing. Except maybe every once in a while, if you've got high-end items, maybe you might get a high-end material. But, that's really just for armor. That's not for guns, per se. So, it's a system that it's right there, but really it needs a little bit of tweaking, to be honest with you. Both the clan rewards and the materials. So, with obviously, positives leading in the directions of the end game, loot, combat, tactics and stuff like that, as well as the clan stuff. Negatives, obviously stemming on the story. There's also another thing that kind of gets me a little bit, and that is the AI. Now, the AI is both good and bad. The AI sometimes is really good on both your end as well as the enemy's end. What do I mean by that? I mean that you actually have allies. You have more allies, I believe, honestly. I'm a little rusty on the Division, but it feels like you have a lot more allies and people are willing to do a lot more stuff in this game than it was in the Division. I could be wrong on that, but honestly, it feels like you actually have just way more help. I mean, especially when you're taking over control points and when you can call in allies and you'll have 3 to 5 people help, come swooping in and help you take over bases. If you're not careful, they can die and you'll have to recall for more allies. So it makes it where you can't just sit back and try to let them have everything and to do everything because they might get wiped out. But, so it helps really utilize and helps you feel like, they're doing something. You'll see them kill people. They'll do things. They won't. It's not like Battlefield Hardline bad. The problem is, though, is sometimes your AI is just, really wonky. And for instance, when you're doing, a hostage situation, whether you're rescuing hostages in, public events that are throughout the world, or you are doing a story mission that requires you to, save somebody, they'll pick up a gun and they'll just start running into battle. And most of the time they'll catch on fire, they'll get lit up, and you're like, what are you doing? Instead of, hanging out with you, they're just running all over the fucking map. There was one time, actually probably a few days ago, that there was a hostage situation in a public square. My boy Solar and I were actually stopping a public execution, and one of the dudes ran so far out of the zone that if you chased after him to protect him, you would actually get out of the public execution event. I don't know why he was running. He just booked it, and he's just gone. So sometimes the AI is just really stupid. Sometimes the AI is really helpful. I won't say they're smart, but they can be really helpful. And sometimes, they do surprise you. Enemy AI too. Sometimes the enemy AI does the very things that, yes, they're frustrating, but you look back and you're like, wow, okay, the AI played me really well. Whether it's being aggressive or suckering you in, playing someone defensively and then, swinging around you and flanking you really well. I do love how the enemy AI does play sometimes, but there's other times the dumb fucks stand right there and let you shoot them, and sometimes you'll walk up to them, they're not even suppressed, you'll be able to walk up to them hiding behind something and you'll shoot them in the head, or the last one, which is the funniest one, sometimes you'll be shooting at a guy and he'll just run right by you, literally right next to you. Just run by you. He won't fire anything. He'll just be just booking it. And you're like, what is going on with this AI sometimes? Sometimes the AI, it seems like, just doesn't know what it wants to do. It's only 10% of the time, but it's still enough that you notice it and you're like, what the hell is this character doing? So it's really more of a neutral kind of a wash. Because it's one of those things where, like I said, I would sit there and actually say the AI is good most of the time. I would say it's 85-90% of the time. But it's that 10 to 15% that just leaves you scratching your head. It's just dumbfounded. Also, yes, there are bugs and glitches here and there. Nothing game breaking. I didn't have any. Well, actually, I did have one hard crash. But, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but it happened here a week or so ago, right before they did their maintenance. There was a pretty hard crash that booted both John, aka Solar Flare, and myself out of the game, but really other than that, and no real hard crashes, just your occasional just bug or glitch that was just funny more than anything. So, really that's mainly it. I mean, the game overall, it is really good. But the question is it the gold standard of looter shooters? Now, while I do agree with people like Skill Up or, even Angry Joe with some of the points that he made as well. I'm really torn in the middle. I don't believe, like I said before, that it's really the gold standard per se of all the looter shooters. I do believe, though, that it does set a gold standard in certain ways. With its world, its environments, with the feeling of always feeling like you are being rewarded. And that there are objects and characters and things hidden throughout the world that some of them are there, hidden for you to find, and some of them are hidden in a way where they don't want you to find them. They want you to really dig and look for them. And they'll be stuffed in around every corner, and it's brilliant. It's great game design, and it has to be applauded for Massive to do this, because where The Division, in a lot of ways, didn't feel nearly as alive, it felt somewhat dead. Because, the things that really made the first Division feel alive were really just the echoes and the recordings that you found. But it didn't have what the Division 2 has, which is really, like I said before, the sprawling open world. And actually, they did a good job of reeling it in, too. I could be wrong on this, but I genuinely feel like this map is way smaller than like something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And it's an Ubisoft game, so I'm surprised that they held back, but I'm glad, because every single corner of the map feels stuffed to the brim with, high-end enemies who have, even things like card sets and collectibles on each one of, the named high-end enemies scattered throughout the map that you want to find sets of. Or, like I said before, recordings. There's collectibles and, arts, and, there are monuments to see, and just so much stuff to find in this world, and I'm still finding new things here and there. So that aspect is great, and I want games like Destiny and games like even Borderlands to really kind of be able to adopt these things. Anthem could as well, because Anthem has a great big beautiful world, but it does feel somewhat hollow and empty. Taking lessons from Massive on the things that they fucking crush are only going to make other looter shooters that much better. That, and obviously, like I said before, the other really great thing, other than just the world, is the combat, that feeling of that tug and the pull. For me, I find it, exhilarating and entertaining. I don't get too bored with the combat for the most part, especially when you have to really think about, okay, I need to use certain things here, I need to do certain things there. Certain, characters and certain objectives, some of the enemies, they don't feel nearly as spongy. Yes, they have lots of armor on them, but you can pick them off and pop off certain parts, and it feels more interactive than it did when they were just bullet sponges in the Division. However, the reason why I really can't keep it as my gold standard as looter shooters is because Borderlands 2 has a significantly better story, and still keeps up most of the principles that the Division 2 does well. And so it makes it where it does get that little leg up. And especially after playing back through some of the early, levels of the original Borderlands, which came out 10 years ago, you still have a significantly better story and a significantly better game for the most part. That doesn't mean that Massive still can't keep learning a few lessons and keep evolving the formula that they have. They have a really good one, a solid one, and I am here to praise them. I'm not here to just shit on them. They did a great job with this game, and it was one of those things where I really thought the Division 2 was going to fail. I'm glad to be wrong. I really am. Because after the massive blowback that the Division got, even though it kind of crawled back from it, Destiny did the same thing, and it failed to learn some of the lessons that it did learn over its 3 years it had Destiny. So with the Division, I was kind of like, they might do the same thing. But like I said, I'm glad that I was wrong on that. This is a good game. And it's just one of the many good games that have come out over the last couple months. There's so many of them, I can barely keep up with them. My final verdict for the Division 2 is an 8 out of 10. And honestly, I'll actually even give it to my seal of approval. It does belong on your shelf, especially if you're a looter shooter fan. If you're somebody looking for story, avoid the sucking game. Okay, but if you're somebody like me who likes games to sit there and put down for a little bit, come back, and and just feel like your time isn't wasted. Games like Borderlands 2, Destiny 2 now in its current format, with Forsaken and the annual pass stuff, or even this game now, The Division 2, where you feel like you can come back, once a week, twice a week, and there's new shit to do. There's new things being added in the game. How they just added a patch, actually on Friday, they added a patch to sit there and make it where there's, a whole nother tier level, and they added another stronghold. So there's even more in-game, and they added it with this patch. There's now, even just that little patch, there's more in-game than Anthem has. If you want a game that's not going to waste your time, and like I said, you really enjoy looter shooter, and you enjoy leveling up and the grinding, this game will give you plenty of that. So I absolutely would recommend it to those. But like I said, if you're looking for a game with story, go play Metro Exodus. Go play Devil May Cry 5. Check out those reviews. They're in my lists. Go check them out. Go see what I said about those games. Resident Evil 2 Remake, stuff like that. There are plenty of games with story, and there's even more coming out here soon enough. Go check out that stuff. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and get off here. I know, like I said before, I know I'm late with this review. There is an update video that I should have put up before this one. This one's going to take a minute to go ahead and edit and get, clips and stuff like that I want to be able to put in it. But in the update video, I'll let you know what's coming up. I'm excited. I can't wait to talk to you guys when that stuff comes out. And until then, I'll see you guys on the next On The Shelf. Bye now.